a shiny new condo tower completely empty, an airport expansion abandoned halfway through construction. Local shops are shutting down faster than new ones can even put up a sign. And city officials, they've gone silent. Across Canada, the economy isn't just wobbling, it's flashing full blown warning lights. But in some cities, it's already too late. They're not at risk anymore, they're already cracking. So, what's happening? Over reliance on fossil fuels. Real estate markets gone toxic. Young people packing up and leaving, and once thriving industries vanishing overnight. If you live in one of these areas, the fallout won't be 5 years away. It could hit before the year's out. So, which cities are we talking about? Let's count down the top 10 collapse zones, because this list might just hit closer to home than you think. Number 10, Chicago, once vibrant suburban shopping strips, now scattered with boarded up stores. Downtown office towers, half empty with more vacant desks than people actually work in. But the real storm is brewing just beneath the surface, a housing market that's hanging by a thread. And no, Chicago's struggle isn't just about crime or taxes, it's something deeper, a slow, grinding decay of the city's economic core. In just a few short years, over 100,000 people have packed up and left. Sky high property taxes are pushing families out, while rising mortgage rates are slamming the brakes on new buyers. Add to that, a downtown still staggering from the shift to remote work and public pensions bleeding city funds dry. And you've got a recipe for a fragile, teetering economy. So here's the question. If a national recession hits, could it be the shove that sends Chicago into a full-blown freefall? We're breaking it all down, city by city, fact by fact. And hey, if this kind of hard-hitting breakdown matters to you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it forward. It helps us dig deeper and bring you the stories most skip over. Because next, the cities only get more unstable. Number 9, the San Joaquin Valley, California. Picture this, rows of half-finished homes baking under the relentless California sun, farm towns where the grocery stores have vanished, but dollar loan shops are popping up like weeds. This region was once hailed as the backbone of America's food supply, but now it's quietly bleeding out. So, what happens when one of the world's most crucial agricultural zones can't even sustain itself economically? Welcome to the San Joaquin Valley, where the next housing collapse isn't looming, it may already be underway. Spanning the heart of California, this valley powers the nation's agriculture, yet it ranks among the most economically fragile places in the country. Nearly 1 in 5 people here lives below the poverty line. Wages trail far behind the state average. And then came the housing boom, fueled by pandemic buyers fleeing sky-high prices in San Francisco and LA. But that wave, it's over. Buyers are gone, home prices are slipping, and the few pillars that supported this market, seasonal farm work, trucking gigs, and government aid, are starting to crack. And the next blow is already building water. Years of drought, shifting climate patterns, and strict groundwater regulations have turned thousands of acres into barren dust. No water means no crops, no crops, no jobs, and no jobs. That's a death sentence for any housing market. But here's what really makes this dangerous. Unlike coastal California, the San Joaquin Valley has no financial safety net. There's no booming tech sector to catch the fall, no foreign investors shoring up home values. When the bottom drops out here, it drops hard and silently. Before we go deeper, take a moment to subscribe and hit like. It helps us shine a light on places that are too often overlooked, but shouldn't be. Because what's unfolding in the San Joaquin Valley might just be the first true warning sign of what a housing collapse looks like when it hits the working class core of America. And if a recession takes root, this region may not just bend, it could break. Number 8, the Orlando region. Record-breaking crowds at the theme parks. Yet locals are packing up and moving out. Brand new homes rising by the hour, but thousands of them sit eerily empty. So the question is, what happens when the magic fades in a city quite literally built on fantasy? Orlando is flashing red flags that few are daring to talk about. On the surface, things look fine, skylines expanding, tourist numbers strong, but underneath, this housing market is on shaky ground. Start here. Over half of Orlando's economy depends on tourism, entertainment, and hospitality, industries that crash hard when recessions hit. When Americans tighten their wallets and international travelers stay home, Orlando feels it fast and deep. But it's not just the job volatility, it's how this entire housing market has been constructed fast, speculative, and often without a solid local buyer base. A huge chunk of recent demand came from investors, vacation home buyers, and people escaping high cost cities. But now, those same buyers are pulling back. Home prices in Orlando soared over 60% between 2020 and 2023, but wages didn't come close. In some zip codes, affordability has hit a breaking point, with rent eating up more than 40% of a household's income. And here's the kicker: developers flooded the market betting on nonstop growth. But demand is slowing, vacancies are rising, and some projects are already hitting pause. And then there's the insurance crisis. Like the rest of Florida, premiums in Orlando are spiking, especially in areas prone to floods and storms. But the deeper issue? Orlando doesn't have a safety net. There's no major finance hub, no big tech corridor, no diversified industry to catch the fall. It's theme parks, tourism, and seasonal service work. And when those go quiet, everything does. This isn't just a tourist destination, it's a housing market built on unpredictability. And in a national recession, unpredictability turns from risky to dangerous. Could Orlando be the next Florida boomtown to suddenly go ice cold? If the signs are right, it may already be happening. Number 7, the New York City metro area. The skyline still sparkles, but down at street level, the cracks are spreading. So here's the question: what happens when hundreds of thousands of people can no longer afford to live in the city that never sleeps? When Wall Street bonuses dry up, gleaming office towers go half empty, and even a $5 coffee starts to feel like a splurge. With over 20 million people calling this region home, you'd think it's too big to falter. But New York is more vulnerable than it looks. Office vacancy rates have surged past 20%, leaving once bustling buildings eerily quiet. In some boroughs, rents remain sky high, but eviction filings are stacking up. It's a pressure cooker, and a recession could blow the lid off. Mortgage rates are already pushing buyers out of the market, and layoffs in tech and finance, the lifeblood of New York's economy, are picking up steam. Even the wealthy commuter suburbs of New Jersey, Connecticut, and Westchester aren't immune. They're starting to wobble too. In a place like New York, momentum is everything. It's what keeps the city moving. But once that momentum slips, the fall can be fast and brutal. Could the next housing crisis ignite right here, in America's financial capital? If you're watching the signs, it's not a question of if, it's when. Number 6, the Inland Empire, California. A warehouse boomtown built on 2-day shipping and cheap land. But here's the big question: what happens when the trucks stop coming? Sprawling across Riverside and San Bernardino counties, the Inland Empire became one of the fastest-growing housing markets in the U.S. after the pandemic. Developers couldn't build fast enough, warehouses sprouted by the thousands, and homes were snatched up as soon as they hit the market. But now, the warning lights are blinking in every direction. This region leans heavily on logistics, e-commerce, and home construction. But with online shopping growth slowing and interest rates holding stubbornly high, both legs of that economy are starting to buckle. Amazon has already pulled the plug on multiple warehouse projects. Truck traffic from nearby ports has dropped. Construction jobs are vanishing. And here's where it gets scary. Home prices shot up so fast, many residents are now trapped, stuck with bloated mortgages on properties that are quietly losing value. Nearly 1 in 4 Inland Empire homeowners now spends more than half of their income just to cover housing costs. And as affordability collapses, the market has frozen, buyers gone. Stack on top of that surging commercial vacancies, brutal commute times, rising unemployment, and slowing population growth, and you start to see a region losing steam fast. But here's the truly chilling part. This isn't the Inland Empire's first collapse. Back in 2008, it was ground zero for the housing crash. Foreclosures soared, entire neighborhoods went dark, ghost towns overnight. Now some economists are sounding the alarm. It's happening again. Because when a region is built on relentless growth, and that growth slams to a halt, what's left? Could the Inland Empire be the next epicenter of a Western U.S. housing implosion? Or has the first fracture already formed? Number 5, the Baltimore region. A city with a rich history, a strategic location, and a skyline of potential, but behind it all, a harsh reality, boarded up row houses, vanishing tax revenue, and a housing market that feels like it's balancing on a wire. So here's the uncomfortable question. What do you do when a city is too expensive to fix, but too broken to ignore? On paper, Baltimore seems like a city poised for success. It's close to Washington, D.C., packed with historic neighborhoods, and billions have already been funneled into redevelopment. But dig a little deeper, and you'll see a fragile system barely holding together, propped up by federal jobs, aging industries, and a housing market divided by sharp inequality. Just look at the numbers. Over 15,000 homes sit vacant across Baltimore. Entire blocks are abandoned. And while revitalization efforts exist, many projects are stalled, crippled by cost overruns, or priced out of reach for longtime residents. Add in stubbornly high crime rates and a public school system under severe strain, and it's no surprise that families with options are leaving. Investors are stepping back, and insurance premiums are spiking, especially in aging row house districts hit hard by fires and theft. Economically, the warning signs are multiplying. Job growth has slowed. Downtown office vacancy is creeping past 30%. And with looming federal budget cuts and the long-term effects of remote work, Baltimore's biggest economic anchors, like government employment and commuter traffic, are starting to shake. But here's what makes this market especially vulnerable. Inequality. In some neighborhoods, property values have tripled. In others, they've barely moved since the 2008 crash. That kind of unevenness, it's dangerous, because when the next downturn hits, it doesn't strike evenly. It hits the softest spots first. If this breakdown opened your eyes, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to see what's coming, and subscribe for more truth-driven reports. Housing markets across the country are shifting fast, and what's next could reshape entire cities. Stay informed, stay ahead. We're just getting started. Number 4, the Tampa Bay area. Picture this, sleek new condos with stunning views of the bay, sitting unsold. Restaurants that used to have wait lists out the door on Saturday night, now half empty. And the people who once bragged about Florida's unstoppable boom, they're quietly asking if it's time to pull out. Because what happens when paradise becomes too expensive to hold on to? For years, Tampa was the poster child for Florida's explosive growth. Sunshine, tax perks, affordable living, it was the dream. But that dream, it's cracking. Tampa's housing market is now one of the most overheated in the entire country. Since 2020, median home prices have jumped over 50%, while wages haven't even come close. In some neighborhoods, it now takes over 9 years of median income just to afford the median-priced home. And here's where things get risky. Investors. At the peak, nearly 1 in 3 homes in Tampa was being snapped up by landlords and hedge funds. When the market's hot, they pump up prices. But in a downturn, they vanish and take the floor right out from under everyone else. Then there's insurance, the silent crisis. Premiums have skyrocketed across the Tampa Bay area, with some homeowners seeing their costs triple thanks to mounting storm risks. And for many residents, this isn't just about lifestyle anymore, it's about survival. They're not asking if they should move, they're asking if they can even afford to stay. Tourism, a key economic driver, It's slowing down. Retirees who once saw Tampa as a golden destination are rethinking that move as healthcare costs rise and fixed incomes stretch thinner than ever. Now, layer on the threat of a national recession, high personal debt, investor pullback, collapsing affordability, and a broken insurance system. That's not just a dip in the market, it's the makings of a collapse in motion. Before we continue, hit that like button and subscribe. This is how we bring you the kind of deep, fact-driven reporting others ignore. No hype, no fluff, just the hard truth about what's unfolding in America's most vulnerable markets. Because in Tampa Bay, the question isn't if the storm is coming, it's whether the foundation will hold when it does. Number 3, the Fresno-Kern region, California.
Bright new subdivisions stretch endlessly across the horizon. Billboards scream promises of affordable luxury and your dream home in the valley. But beneath the polished ads and fresh pavement, a storm is gathering, and it's accelerating fast. So what happens when an entire housing market is built on borrowed time, on over-leveraged buyers, unstable industries, and jobs one heat wave away from vanishing? In California's Central Valley, the Fresno-Kern corridor may soon become one of the most at-risk housing zones in the country. At first glance, it looks like a refuge from the state's sky-high costs. Homes are cheaper, lots are larger, and growth feels inevitable. But peer under the surface, and the cracks start to split wide open. This region's economy leans heavily on agriculture, oil, and logistics, industries known for volatility and little long-term security. In Kern County, oil production is still a major employer, but it's shrinking under environmental regulations and declining demand. Fresno, on the other hand, depends on seasonal farm work and government jobs, both highly vulnerable when recessions hit. Meanwhile, a pandemic-era construction boom, fueled by low interest rates and speculative buying, has pushed the market into dangerous territory. Many residents here are now severely cost-burdened, with over 50% of their income going just to keep a roof over their heads. And if jobs disappear or wages drop, foreclosures could spike fast. When a few homes go under in these newer developments, the ripple effect can take down entire blocks.
This isn't hypothetical. During the 2008 crash, the Central Valley was ground zero for the housing collapse. Fresno and Bakersfield saw entire neighborhoods go dark, unfinished, abandoned, forgotten. Back then, the warning signs were missed or ignored. Now, they're flashing again, only this time, louder. This isn't just about falling home prices. It's about local economies buckling under the weight of shrinking opportunity and overbuilt expectations. And if history repeats itself here, the crash won't be slow and orderly. It'll strike like a dust storm, sudden, chaotic, and unforgiving. Could Fresno and Kern be the next cautionary tale of America's overbuilt, underprepared heartland? If you're paying attention, the answer might already be here. Number 2, Florida's Gulf Coast. Picture this: condos rising out of sand, streets gleaming with luxury cars, the sun still shining, and then, suddenly, silence. Not from a hurricane, but from something far more permanent. What happens when the dream of coastal Florida becomes too expensive to live in and too risky to insure? From Naples to Sarasota to Cape Coral, the Gulf Coast has been one of the fastest rising housing markets in the entire country. For years, it was marketed as a paradise: low taxes, endless sun, and booming demand from retirees and remote workers. But now, that perfect image is cracking. Home prices have surged over 60% since 2020, but now inventory is stacking up, sellers are slashing prices, and demand is slipping. Meanwhile, insurance? It's becoming a nightmare. Premiums have exploded, if you can even get coverage. Many homeowners are being dropped entirely, forced onto last resort state-run plans that can cost thousands per month. And here's what no one wants to say out loud: Climate risk is catching up. The Gulf Coast is ground zero for sea level rise, storm surges, and extreme heat. As these disasters grow more frequent and more expensive, insurance companies are pulling out, lenders are tightening, and beachfront property is no longer a guaranteed gold mine. It might just be the next thing to fall. Jobs here are tied closely to construction, tourism, and real estate, the very industries that dry up fast during a recession. With federal flood maps being redrawn and interest rates still sky high, even affluent buyers are hesitating. In places like Fort Myers and Punta Gorda, shiny new homes sit untouched. Condo fees are spiking just to cover repairs and rising insurance bills. And here's the real danger. It could take just one major storm or one sharp economic downturn to send entire local markets into a free fall. Before we move on, make sure you hit subscribe and like this video. That's what lets us keep bringing you deep, fact-checked reporting that others gloss over. Because the Gulf Coast isn't just vulnerable to weather, it's vulnerable to a financial flood. And this time, the waters may not recede. Number 1, the New Orleans Metro. The streetcars still roll, the jazz still plays, but behind the music, something is quietly, steadily unraveling. What happens when one of America's most resilient cities starts running out of lifelines? At first glance, New Orleans is everything we love: rich culture, deep character, and that unmistakable coastal charm. But beneath the beauty, the economic foundation is cracking, and the signs aren't just visible, they're screaming. First, insurance. It's detonating the real estate market. Across the region, homeowners are being dropped, denied, or hit with triple-digit premium hikes. For some, private coverage is no longer even an option. Why? Because of billion-dollar storms. Hurricane Ida alone caused over $75 billion in damage. Now, major insurers are pulling out completely. The fallout? Buyers are walking away, homes are sitting vacant, and for those who stay, the costs are becoming unbearable. Second, population loss. Since 2020, tens of thousands have left the metro. Jobs are limited, mostly tied to tourism, the public sector, or oil and gas, industries that are extremely vulnerable during recessions. Fewer people are staying, even fewer are moving in. Demand for housing is drying up. Third, flood risk and failing infrastructure. New Orleans is literally sinking. As sea levels rise and the ground subsides, flood maps are being redrawn. Neighborhoods once considered safe are now high-risk zones. That means more insurance problems, rising costs, and fewer lenders willing to write loans. And this isn't just a New Orleans problem. Suburbs like Metairie, Kenner, and Slidell are all under pressure. Long commutes, aging roads, rising crime, and housing markets stretched to their limit, too expensive to afford, but too risky to hold. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina exposed the city's physical vulnerability. But what's happening now? It's slower and arguably more dangerous. This is economic erosion, a quiet collapse that starts with unaffordable insurance and ends with empty streets. If a national recession hits, New Orleans might not just struggle. It could become the first major U.S. metro where climate risk and economic fragility collide into a full-blown housing collapse.